What if everything you thought you knew about Disney storytelling was only half the truth? The Lion King franchise stands as one of Disney's most beloved creations, spanning decades and captivating audiences across generations. But beneath its seemingly straightforward narrative lies something much more profound: the perfect embodiment of the golden mean. This isn't just about balancing good and evil. It's about the deliberate fusion of analytical precision and bold authorial vision that creates a universe both timeless and constantly evolving. When we examine the Lion King franchise through this lens, a pattern emerges that fundamentally changes our understanding of why these stories resonate so deeply. It's not merely coincidence that the franchise has maintained its cultural impact across original films, sequels, and series like The Lion Guard. There's a method, a perfect balance, that Disney has masterfully cultivated. The visual language tells us everything. Compare the iconic presentation ceremonies across the franchise. In the original film, we witness baby Simba held high above Pride Rock, bathed in golden light as animals bow in perfect formation. Fast forward to The Lion King 2, and Kiara's ceremony maintains the same structure, but introduces subtle differences. Slightly more chaotic animal arrangements, clouds partially obscuring the sun. By the time we reach the Lion Guard, Keon's recognition as leader happens not in a grand ceremony but in a more intimate setting, blending traditional elements with innovation. This visual progression isn't random. It represents Disney's conscious evolution in storytelling approaches, maintaining canonical reverence while embracing new perspectives. The golden mean in action. Have you ever noticed how the narrative voice shifts between analytical and personal throughout the franchise? The original Lion King presents an almost documentary-like perspective on the circle of life. Objective, expansive, showing ecological systems and societal structures with analytical precision. Yet simultaneously, we experience Simba's deeply personal journey of identity and self-discovery, told through an authorial lens that invites us into his emotional world. Let's face it, Disney deliberately walks this tightrope between objective world-building and subjective emotional journeys. When Mufasa explains the stars to Simba, we're simultaneously receiving cosmic truth and personal mythology. When Rafiki discovers Simba is alive, we witness both logical deduction and spiritual revelation. The physical landscapes themselves tell this dual story. Pride Rock stands as both geographical fact and symbolic throne. The elephant graveyard functions as ecological boundary and metaphorical underworld. The lush pridelands versus the barren outlands represent both literal resource distribution and metaphorical moral states. This pattern continues throughout the expanded universe. The Lion Guard introduces the Roar of the Elders, a power that is simultaneously explained through quasi-scientific rules and mystical, unpredictable forces. Keon's journey balances duty-bound ecological protection with personal growth and identity formation. The color palettes reveal the hidden pattern. Trace the evolution of color across the franchise. The original film uses a limited palette dominated by gold, blue, and earth tones. The sequel introduces more purple and crimson. The Lion Guard expands further with vibrant greens and oranges. With each iteration, Disney maintains core visual language while expanding the spectrum. Another manifestation of the golden mean between tradition and innovation. This changes everything. What if the apparent contradictions in the Lion King universe aren't mistakes but deliberate narrative strategy? Consider the seemingly inconsistent timeline between The Lion King 2 and The Lion Guard. Fans have debated endlessly about how Keon fits into the chronology established by the films. But what if this apparent problem is actually the solution? The franchise deliberately creates space for multiple interpretations, honoring analytical minds who crave consistency while rewarding creative thinkers who embrace fluidity. The character of Scar epitomizes this balance. To analytical viewers, he represents ecological mismanagement and political corruption, a case study in failed leadership. To authorial thinkers, he embodies psychological complexity, jealousy, ambition, and resentment personified. Both interpretations are valid, both are intentional, and together they create a character far more compelling than either approach alone could achieve. Look closely at how the franchise handles historical continuity. The original film presents history as mythology, passed through generations, painted on cave walls, subject to interpretation. The Lion Guard introduces more concrete historical elements, specific past leaders, documented achievements, established timelines. This isn't inconsistency, it's the golden mean between mythic storytelling and historical documentation. When we observe how Rafiki preserves and interprets history in the original film versus his apprentice Makini's approach in The Lion Guard, we see this evolution explicitly. Rafiki blends intuition with record-keeping. Makini brings a more systematized approach to tradition while maintaining spiritual connection. What secrets lie in the deliberate contrast between character duos? Mufasa, Scar; Simba, Kovu; Kiara, Vitani; Kion, Yanja. Each pairing represents opposing forces that ultimately achieve balance. The franchise doesn't simply present good triumphing over evil, it shows the necessity of understanding both perspectives to achieve wholeness. The question we should be asking isn't which approach is correct, analytical or authorial. The real revelation lies in recognizing that Disney deliberately employs both simultaneously. As we continue our exploration, prepare to see familiar scenes in an entirely new light. The golden mean isn't just a philosophical concept. It's the hidden key that unlocks the true genius of the Lion King franchise, revealing patterns and purposes you've never noticed before. But here's the cliffhanger that will make you question everything. What if this dual approach isn't just about storytelling technique? What if it reveals fundamental truths about how Disney views its audience and how we view ourselves? The very foundations of the Pride Lands are built on balance. But have you ever noticed how this principle extends to the storytelling itself? To truly understand the golden mean in the Lion King franchise, we must examine the canonical evidence more closely. The balance between analytical and authorial approaches isn't merely stylistic. It's embedded in the very DNA of the universe Disney has created. Let's start with the most fundamental aspect, the circle of life. This concept is simultaneously presented as ecological fact and spiritual doctrine. When Mufasa explains this principle to young Simba, he describes concrete biological processes, predators and prey, decomposition and renewal, while simultaneously imbuing these processes with moral significance and royal responsibility. The visual symbolism couldn't be more explicit. Notice how Pride Rock itself embodies this duality. From one angle, it's a geological formation with practical advantages, high vantage point, protected den, visible landmark. From another perspective, it's deeply symbolic, a throne that reaches toward the heavens, connecting earth and sky, the physical and spiritual realms. What if the entire landscape of the Pride Lands is designed to tell this dual story? The geography transitions from lush savanna to barren wasteland, with the elephant graveyard and later the outlands serving as physical boundaries. Yet these same locations function as moral and philosophical boundaries. The hyena's territory represents both ecological separation and spiritual banishment. Analytical minds appreciate the ecological realism. Authorial thinkers respond to the metaphorical resonance. Pay attention to how the franchise treats knowledge transmission. Rafiki's tree contains drawings documenting Pride Land's history, a literal historical record. Yet these same drawings respond to his touch, transform with his shamanic rituals, and communicate spiritual messages. Is this magic or metaphor? The franchise deliberately refuses to choose, embracing both interpretations simultaneously. When we compare this to how knowledge is preserved and shared in the Lion Guard, we see evolution but not abandonment. Makini's Bakura staff contains tangible historical information, yet channels mystical energies. The lair of the Lion Guard features both factual paintings, documenting past guards, and spiritual connections to those who came before. The musical elements reveal this pattern with striking clarity. Circle of Life opens with Zulu lyrics. Many Western viewers don't understand intellectually, but feel emotionally. Be Prepared balances precise military imagery with psychological exploration of power and manipulation. Can You Feel the Love Tonight combines biological attraction with transcendent connection. Come on, this isn't accidental. Disney consciously crafts each element to satisfy both the analytical mind-seeking patterns and the emotional heart-craving connection. The golden mean extends to character development across generations. Trace Simba's journey. It follows both a logical character arc, naive prince, traumatized exile, reluctant hero, responsible king, and a deeply personal emotional evolution. His famous cloud encounter with Mufasa can be interpreted as psychological breakthrough or spiritual visitation. The franchise validates both readings. Now consider Kovu's parallel journey in The Lion King 2. Like Simba, he navigates both external circumstances, political exile, manipulated identity, and internal transformation. The scene where Kiara teaches Kovu to play is simultaneously showing political diplomacy and psychological healing. The franchise's approach to antagonists reveals this balance most distinctly. Scar isn't merely evil. He's presented as both calculated strategist, analytical, and wounded soul, authorial. His famous monologue during Be Prepared reveals both meticulous planning and deep-seated emotional wounds. His relationship with the hyenas is both political alliance and psychological manipulation. Zira continues this tradition. Her training of Kovu follows methodical, almost scientific precision, yet her motivation stems from complex emotional trauma and devotion. Her eventual downfall results from both tactical errors and emotional blindness. This changes everything. The conflicts in The Lion King aren't simply good versus evil. They're clashes between characters who have lost their internal balance. Look carefully at each antagonist. Scar abandons balance by rejecting his place in the circle of life. Zira loses balance by fixating on vengeance. Janja initially rejects balance by refusing to acknowledge ecological interdependence. Their villainy isn't intrinsic, it stems from embracing one perspective while rejecting its complement. Honestly, the resolution of these conflicts is equally revealing. Villains who cannot restore their internal balance meet tragic ends, while those who recognize the necessity of both perspectives find redemption. Kovu embraces both his outsider identity and Prideland's values. Janja eventually accepts both his predatory nature and the necessity of ecological rules. The visual language of character design reinforces this principle. Notice how Mufasa's appearance balances imposing strength with warm colors and soft contours. Scar's design contrasts this with sharp angles and shadows, yet maintains elegance and intelligence. Simba's adult form merges elements of both, visually representing the golden mean between power and compassion, duty and joy. The water reflection scenes throughout the franchise aren't just visually stunning, they're metaphorically essential. From Simba's original reflection transforming into Mufasa, to Kovu seeing Scar instead of himself, to Kion's struggles with his reflection after receiving his scar, these moments visualize the internal balance each character must achieve. Two perspectives, two images, merging into wholeness. Have you noticed how leadership is consistently defined through this dual lens? When Mufasa teaches Simba about being king, he balances concrete lessons about territorial knowledge and resource management with abstract concepts like honor and responsibility. Simba's eventual success as king depends on integrating both approaches, understanding practical governance while embodying spiritual legacy. The Lion Guard expands this concept. Kion's leadership requires both tactical skill, analytical, and emotional intelligence, authorial. The challenges the Guard faces demand both practical solutions and moral wisdom. Even the roar itself requires both technical mastery and spiritual worthiness. What if the perceived inconsistencies between different entries in the franchise actually serve a deeper purpose? The varying explanations for how Scar got his namesake mark, the different presentations of Prideland's society structure, the evolving mythology of the roar, these aren't continuity errors, but deliberate spaces for multiple interpretations. The golden mean isn't just present within each story, it spans the entire franchise, creating a universe that rewards both the detail-oriented fan-tracking canonical connections and the emotional viewer responding to thematic resonance. The question isn't whether The Lion King is primarily analytical or authorial in its approach. The revelation is that its enduring power comes precisely from refusing to choose. As we move deeper into our exploration, we'll discover how specific canonical moments demonstrate this balance in action, revealing the hidden genius behind scenes you thought you understood completely. But first, consider this paradigm-shifting question. What if the most divisive elements among fans, the very aspects that cause the most heated debates, are deliberately designed to reveal which side of the golden mean each viewer naturally favors? If Disney deliberately created a storytelling approach that balances opposing forces, Where else might this golden mean be hiding in plain sight? To truly grasp the magnitude of this theory, we need to examine specific canonical evidence that demonstrates the golden mean in action. These aren't merely stylistic choices. They're fundamental principles that govern the entire Lion King universe. Let's establish 5 key visual clues that reveal this pattern. Visual clue number 1, the symbolic use of height and elevation. Throughout the franchise, physical height correlates with both literal power and metaphorical status. Pride Rock serves as the highest point in the landscape, representing both tactical advantage, analytical, and spiritual elevation, authorial. When Scar usurps the throne, he's frequently shown lounging at Pride Rock's peak. Yet the visual composition suggests imbalance. He's either too far forward, risking a fall, or lurking in shadows. Contrast this with scenes of balanced leadership. Mufasa standing firmly at Pride Rock's edge, Simba's triumphant ascent in the rain, Kion overlooking the Pride Lands from balanced vantage points. The message is clear. True leadership requires finding the middle ground between imposing height and grounded connection. Visual clue number 2, the deliberate color harmony. Analyze the color palettes associated with balanced versus unbalanced characters. Those who embody the golden mean are visualized with complementary colors and harmony. Mufasa's red mane against golden fur, Simba's warm tones balanced with cool shadows, Kiara's blend of her parents' coloration. Characters who have lost their balance display color disharmony. Scar's black mane and sickly green eyes create unsettling contrast. Zira's pale tone and blood-red eyes suggest internal conflict. Yanya's initial gray coloration lacks vitality until his redemption brings warmer tones. Let's be honest, this color theory extends beyond characters to environments. The Pride Lands under balanced rule show harmonious color relationships, blues and golds, greens and earths. During Scar's reign, sickly yellows clash with ashen grays. This isn't merely artistic choice. It's visual manifestation of the golden mean theory. Visual clue number 3, the mirroring of physical and emotional landscapes. Notice how the physical environment directly reflects the psychological state of leadership. Under balanced rule, the Pride Lands demonstrate both abundance, analytical resource management, and beauty, authorial appreciation. When balance is lost, the environment suffers both practically and aesthetically. This pattern continues in the Lion Guard, where Kion's internal balance directly affects his ability to control the roar's power. When he loses emotional equilibrium, both physical destruction and spiritual corruption threaten. Visual clue number 4. The symbolic representation of stars. Stars in the Lion King universe serve dual functions. They're scientifically accurate celestial bodies and spiritually significant connections to ancestors. When Mufasa teaches Simba about the stars, he's simultaneously providing astronomical fact and spiritual comfort. This dual symbolism reaches its apex in the Lion Guard, where the stars not only represent ancestors but actively communicate with and empower the living. The franchise never forces viewers to choose between scientific and spiritual interpretations. It embraces both simultaneously. Visual clue number 5, the ritualistic cycle of life and leadership. The presentation ceremonies throughout the franchise balance practical political ritual with spiritual consecration. Rafiki's anointment of cubs serves both as societal recognition, analytical, and blessing, authorial. The gathering of animals represents both ecological community and metaphysical connection. Even moments of leadership transition follow this pattern. Simba's defeat of Scar resolves both a physical power struggle and a spiritual imbalance. Kion's acquisition of the roar represents both tactical advantage and moral responsibility. This changes everything. The Lion King's most iconic scenes aren't primarily about good triumphing over evil. They're about restoring balance between analytical and authorial perspectives. Let's examine 3 perspective-shifting moments that reveal this truth. Perspective shift number 1. Mufasa's life and legacy. Traditional viewing interprets Mufasa as the perfect king whose wisdom is absolute. But the golden mean theory reveals something more nuanced. Mufasa himself was still seeking balance. His strengths leaned toward the authorial. Emotional connection, spiritual understanding, inspirational leadership, while his analytical approach showed limitations. His treatment of Scar demonstrates this imbalance. He failed to acknowledge the practical threat his brother posed, focusing instead on familial bonds. His famous "everything the light touches" scene emphasizes boundless possibility, authorial, while glossing over specific resource management details, analytical. Mufasa's true legacy isn't perfect leadership, but the ongoing search for balance, a journey he entrusts to Simba. This reinterpretation transforms Mufasa from flawless deity to relatable exemplar of the golden mean pursuit. Perspective shift must too. Simba's Hakuna Matata period, typically viewed as either carefree escapism or irresponsible abandonment, the golden mean reveals this period as necessary recalibration. Simba's early training under Mufasa emphasized responsibility without joy, duty without self-knowledge. His time with Timon and Pumbaa represents overcorrection toward personal freedom, without communal obligation. The genius of Simba's journey is that he needed both extremes to find the middle path. His eventual success comes not from rejecting either perspective, but integrating both, maintaining joyful self-acceptance while embracing responsibility. Perspective shift number 3. The true nature of the roar of the elders. The Lion Guard introduces the roar as a power with specific rules and limitations, analytical framework, yet its ultimate expression transcends these boundaries through emotional and spiritual growth, authorial development. Kion's mastery of the roar doesn't come from technical skill alone, nor from pure emotional connection. It requires balancing both approaches. His journey from fearing the roar to controlling it, to ultimately surrendering it, represents the golden mean path in its purest form. The pattern becomes undeniable when we examine how characters resolve their central conflicts. Simba defeats Scar not merely through physical prowess, but by integrating truth-telling with compassionate opportunity for redemption. Kiara prevents war not through combat, but by illuminating common ground between divided groups. Kion ultimately masters the roar by learning when not to use it. What if the Lion King universe operates on a philosophical framework far more sophisticated than most viewers realize? Consider how the franchise addresses morality, not as simple dichotomy between good and evil, but as balance between competing virtues. Courage must be tempered with wisdom. Justice requires mercy. Leadership demands both strength and vulnerability. This approach mimics classical philosophical traditions. Aristotle's golden mean, African Ubuntu philosophy, Buddhist middle way, while remaining accessible to audiences of all ages. I think it's time we acknowledge that Disney has created not just entertainment, but a coherent philosophical system disguised as talking animals. The golden mean theory explains why the franchise resonates across cultures and generations. It speaks simultaneously to our analytical desire for ordered understanding and our authorial hunger for meaningful connection. The golden mean isn't just a theoretical framework, it's a practical guide embedded throughout the narrative. Notice how balanced characters succeed while imbalanced characters fail. Mufasa balances strength with compassion. Scar prizes intellect over connection. Simba integrates responsibility with joy. Zira fixates on vengeance at the cost of love. Kion harmonizes power with restraint. Yanja initially chooses immediate gain over sustainable relationship. The resolution of each character arc follows the same pattern. Those who achieve internal balance between analytical and authorial perspectives find external success and happiness. Those who cling to one perspective while rejecting its complement face tragedy. But the true genius of the franchise is that it applies the same principle to its audience. The Lion King offers different access points depending on viewer temperament. Analytical minds can appreciate the ecological systems, political dynamics, and cause-effect relationships. Authorial personalities connect with emotional journeys, spiritual themes, and character development. Both approaches are validated, and the richest experience comes from embracing both simultaneously. This explains why these stories remain relevant decades after their creation. They don't simply tell us what to think, they invite us to find our own balance between thinking and feeling, analyzing and experiencing. As we continue our exploration, we'll see how this golden mean theory transforms our understanding of individual characters across generations. But first, consider this provocative question. What if the greatest measure of a character's heroism isn't their power, goodness, or even wisdom, but their ability to achieve and maintain this delicate balance. And what might that reveal about our own potential for greatness? Could the secret to understanding every major character in the Lion King franchise be hidden in how they navigate the balance between analytical and authorial approaches? The golden mean theory transforms our understanding of character development throughout the franchise. What initially appears as simple hero-villain dynamics reveals itself as a sophisticated exploration of balance and imbalance, integration and fragmentation. Let's examine how key characters embody this principle across generations. Simba, the journey from extremes to balance. Simba's character arc isn't simply about accepting responsibility. It's about integrating opposing forces. As a cub, he swings between extremes: reckless bravery in the elephant graveyard, paralyzing fear when facing the stampede. His exile period represents another extreme: total abandonment of analytical responsibility in favor of authorial self-fulfillment. Notice the visual symbolism during his pivotal transformation scene. When Simba encounters Mufasa in the clouds, he stands precisely between earth and sky, the physical realm of analytical thought and the spiritual domain of authorial connection. His famous "remember who you are" epiphany isn't about choosing one identity over another, but integrating his roles as son, king, friend, and individual. His triumphant return demonstrates this balance. He fights Scar with both tactical skill, analytical, and righteous purpose, authorial. He reclaims the throne through both legitimate succession, analytical governance, and spiritual worthiness, authorial validation. But what about Scar? Is he merely an embodiment of evil or something more complex? Scar represents what happens when brilliant analytical capacity becomes disconnected from authorial empathy. His intelligence, strategic thinking, and understanding of power dynamics are unmatched. Yet he lacks connection to the circle of life's spiritual dimensions. His famous line, "I'm surrounded by idiots," reveals his analytical superiority and authorial isolation. He can manipulate political systems but cannot sustain loving relationships. He comprehends power structures but misunderstands ecological balance. What if Scar's tragic flaw isn't evil but imbalance? Examine his leadership approach. Meticulously planned coup, analytical brilliance, undermined by ecological ignorance, authorial disconnect. His ability to command hyenas demonstrates political acumen. His inability to maintain the Pride Lands reveals spiritual bankruptcy. This changes everything. The true tragedy of Scar isn't his villainy, but his wasted potential. A mind capable of greatness, destroyed by refusal to embrace the golden mean. The parallel between Scar and Kovu reveals this principle with striking clarity. Initially, Kovu appears to follow Scar's path: analytical combat training without authorial moral foundation. His planned assassination of Simba demonstrates tactical precision, devoid of ethical consideration. But unlike Scar, Kovu achieves transformation. The pivotal upending sequence shows him embracing joy, connection, and love, authorial elements previously missing from his analytically trained character. His scar matches Scar's physical mark, but his journey diverges precisely because he achieves what his predecessor couldn't: balance. Pay attention to how female characters navigate this balance differently. Nala embodies balanced strength from her introduction, tackling Simba playfully as a cub, physical prowess, while maintaining friendship, emotional connection. Her adult character demonstrates both hunting skill, analytical, and relational insight, authorial. She defeats Simba in combat, yet recognizes him through emotional connection. Kiara's journey inverts Simba's path. Where he begins with authorial enthusiasm and must integrate analytical responsibility, she starts with dutiful analytical understanding of her royal role and must incorporate authorial self-discovery. Her "I want to find out who I am" moment perfectly articulates this quest for balance. The golden mean explains Zira's failure with devastating clarity. Zira possesses both analytical precision, evidenced in her meticulous training regimen, and authorial passion, her devotion to Scar's memory. Yet she cannot integrate these aspects. Her analytical planning serves only her authorial vengeance, while her emotional intensity undermines her tactical judgment. Her final moment, refusing Kiara's offered paw, symbolizes her ultimate rejection of balance. Given the choice between analytical survival and authorial pride, she chooses neither, and thus loses both. Let's face it, Disney created a psychological framework far more sophisticated than most children's entertainment. The secondary characters reveal this pattern just as clearly. Timon and Pumbaa initially represent pure authorial perspective, living for sensation and present joy without analytical foresight. Their character growth comes from integrating responsibility and sacrifice into their philosophy, achieving a more balanced worldview. Rafiki embodies the golden mean from his introduction, combining analytical knowledge, healing, navigation, record-keeping, with authorial wisdom, intuition, spirituality, emotional insight. His eccentric behavior isn't random, but represents the creative tension between these approaches. Examine how the golden mean manifests in generational relationships. The Mufasa-Simba relationship emphasizes authorial connection, love, legacy, inspiration, with limited analytical instruction. The Simba-Kiara relationship inverts this pattern, heavy on analytical protection and guidance, but initially lacking authorial understanding of her individual journey. Zira's relationship with Kovu demonstrates what happens when generational transmission lacks balance. Rigorous analytical training without authorial love produces a skilled weapon rather than a complete individual. The Lion Guard extends this framework to group dynamics. Keon's Guard succeeds precisely because it balances different cognitive approaches. Fuli represents analytical speed and efficiency. Bunga embodies authorial courage and instinct. Beshte balances physical strength with emotional intelligence. Ono provides analytical observation while developing authorial judgment. Their victories come not from individual heroics, but from integrating these complementary perspectives. Their most challenging adversaries are those who refuse such integration. Janja initially rejects ecological balance, Scar's spirit abandons physical reality, Zira refuses collaborative solutions. The most profound application of the golden mean appears in cross-species relationships. When Simba integrates with Timon and Pumbaa's community, he creates unprecedented balance between predator and prey. Keon's Guard represents multiple species working in harmony. Jasari's friendship with Keon bridges traditional enemy species. What if the ultimate message of the franchise isn't about being the rightful king, but about achieving this elusive balance? Consider how leadership is evaluated throughout the franchise. Mufasa's effectiveness comes from balancing strength with compassion. Scar's failure stems from intelligence untempered by empathy. Simba succeeds by integrating responsibility with joy. Keon masters the roar by balancing power with restraint. The consistent message: true leadership requires the golden mean between analytical competence and authorial connection. The visualization of internal conflict reveals this principle with striking clarity. When characters face their defining choices, the franchise frequently employs reflection imagery. Simba seeing Mufasa in the water, Kovu glimpsing Scar in his reflection, Keon confronting his darker nature after receiving his scar. These aren't merely dramatic moments, but visual representations of the internal struggle to integrate opposing aspects of self, to find the golden mean between who they are and who they could become. The resolution of these character arcs follows consistent patterns. Characters who achieve internal balance find external harmony. Simba restores the Pride Lands. Kovu and Kiara unite divided groups. Keon masters the roar. Characters who reject balance meet tragic ends. Scar falls to betrayal. Zira chooses demise over reconciliation. Characters capable of rebalancing find redemption. Janja integrates into ecological balance. Various Outlanders join Pridelanders. Honestly, this framework explains character decisions that otherwise seem inconsistent. Why does Simba initially overprotect Kiara? He's overcorrecting from his own imbalanced youth. Why does Keon struggle with the roar? He's navigating the balance between power and restraint. Why does Zira train Kovu so rigorously yet fail to win his loyalty? She provides analytical preparation without authorial connection. The golden mean transforms our understanding of motivation throughout the franchise. Typical interpretations view character actions as driven by simple motivations. Mufasa by goodness, Scar by jealousy, Simba by duty, Zira by revenge. But the golden mean reveals more nuanced drivers. Mufasa seeks to preserve balance he imperfectly embodies. Scar attempts to impose analytical order without authorial wisdom. Simba struggles to integrate contradictory aspects of his identity. Zira pursues authorial vengeance through analytical means. Each character isn't simply good or evil, but positioned somewhere on the spectrum of balance between opposing forces. This explains why redemption is possible for some characters but not others. Characters capable of shifting toward balance can be redeemed. Kovu embraces love alongside ambition. Vitani accepts unity despite past division. Janja recognizes ecological interdependence. Those who refuse this integration cannot achieve redemption. Scar rejects brotherhood in favor of domination. Zira chooses vengeance over reconciliation. The Golden Mean isn't just a theoretical lens. It's the explicit message of the franchise's most pivotal moments. We Are One isn't merely about social unity. It's about integrating opposing perspectives. Remember Who You Are isn't simply about identity. It's about balancing competing aspects of self. The circle of life isn't just ecological fact. It's philosophical framework for balancing analytical understanding and authorial connection. But here's the question that changes everything. What if the most profound application of the Golden Mean isn't within the narrative at all, but in how Disney designed these stories to transform their audience? The franchise doesn't merely depict characters seeking balance. It creates viewing experiences that balance analytical satisfaction and authorial resonance. It doesn't just tell a story about the Golden Mean. It embodies this principle in its storytelling approach. Consider the implications. If finding balance between analytical and authorial perspectives leads to success within the Pride Lands, could this same principle apply to our human experience beyond the screen? What if the Lion King franchise isn't just telling a story about balance, but actively teaching us how to achieve it in our own lives? As we expand our understanding of the Golden Mean beyond individual characters, a profound revelation emerges. Disney has crafted not merely entertainment, but a comprehensive philosophical system with real-world applications. The balance between analytical precision and authorial voice transcends the screen to offer genuine wisdom about how to navigate our complex world. Let's explore how this principle extends beyond The Lion King to broader Disney philosophy and ultimately to our own experience. First, consider how the Golden Mean manifests across Disney's broader creative approach. The Lion King doesn't exist in isolation. It represents Disney's deliberate evolution toward balanced storytelling. Earlier Disney films often leaned heavily toward authorial fairy tale conventions with limited analytical world-building. Later works sometimes overcompensated with excessive analytical explanation at the expense of emotional resonance. The Lion King franchise achieves unprecedented balance between these approaches, creating worlds that simultaneously make logical sense and emotional impact. This isn't accidental but represents conscious artistic philosophy. The evidence appears throughout Disney's creative universe. Compare how different Disney properties handle magic. Some present it as purely authorial wonder without explanation. Others reduce it to analytical pseudoscience. The most enduring properties, like The Lion King, maintain elegant balance, allowing both systematic understanding and mysterious wonder to coexist. What if this balance explains why certain Disney properties resonate more deeply than others? Films that lean too heavily toward analytical exposition often feel cold and disconnected. Those that overemphasize authorial emotion without logical foundation can seem superficial or manipulative. The most beloved classics, whether Lion King, Beauty and the Beast, or Moana, achieve the Golden Mean between these extremes. The Golden Mean explains Disney's artistic evolution with remarkable clarity. Disney's early era emphasized authorial fairy tales with limited world-building. The Renaissance period, including The Lion King, achieved greater balance between emotional journeys and coherent worlds. Recent films continue this evolution, with properties like Moana and Encanto demonstrating sophisticated integration of analytical cultural research with authorial emotional storytelling. This changes everything. What if The Lion King's greatest innovation wasn't its animation technology or musical achievements, but its pioneering application of the Golden Mean to mainstream storytelling? The connection to African philosophical traditions reveals the depth of this approach. The Lion King draws heavily from African philosophical concepts, particularly Ubuntu, I am because we are, and the Egyptian Ma'at, balance, harmony, and justice. These traditions don't view analytical and authorial perspectives as opposing forces, but as necessary complements, much like the golden mean theory we've identified. When Mufasa explains the circle of life, he's articulating a simplified version of these ancient philosophical systems, presenting them not as abstract theories but as lived wisdom embedded in story. The golden mean principle finds expression in specific African cultural practices depicted throughout the franchise. The presentation ceremonies blend practical political succession, analytical, with spiritual consecration, authorial. The ancestral star traditions combine astronomical observation with spiritual connection. The leadership structures balance practical resource management with moral authority. Come on, let's acknowledge the revolutionary nature of what Disney accomplished. By embedding sophisticated philosophical concepts within accessible storytelling, the Lion King franchise makes profound wisdom available across age groups, cultures, and cognitive styles. It doesn't merely entertain, it initiates viewers into balanced thinking without explicitly labeling its educational function. The real-world applications extend far beyond entertainment. The Golden Mean offers practical guidance for numerous domains: leadership, balancing analytical strategy with authorial vision; education, integrating factual knowledge with meaningful connection relationships; combining logical understanding with emotional attunement; environmental stewardship, uniting scientific management with reverence for nature. Look at how the franchise explicitly models these applications. Simba's kingship demonstrates balanced leadership, making decisions based on both factual assessment and ethical principles. Rafiki's mentorship exemplifies balanced education, transmitting both practical knowledge and spiritual wisdom. The Pride Land's ecological system portrays balanced environmental stewardship, managing resources while honoring interconnection. Honestly, the most powerful aspect of the Golden Mean is how it transcends false dichotomies that plague contemporary discourse. In a world increasingly divided between rational and emotional approaches, scientific and spiritual worldviews, practical and idealistic perspectives, The Lion King offers a third path that honors both sides while transcending their limitations. It doesn't force viewers to choose between analytical truth and authorial meaning. It demonstrates how to integrate them. The narrative techniques themselves embody this integration. The franchise simultaneously satisfies analytical minds through coherent world-building, consistent character development, and logical consequences while fulfilling authorial needs through emotional resonance, symbolic depth, and spiritual themes. Its musical approach balances mathematical precision with emotional expression. Its visual style combines anatomical accuracy with artistic interpretation. Its language integrates factual explanation with poetic metaphor. What if these techniques aren't merely artistic choices but pedagogical strategies? By exposing viewers to balanced thinking through entertainment, Disney cultivates cognitive flexibility, the ability to shift between analytical and authorial modes as circumstances require. This skill proves increasingly valuable in our complex world, where neither pure analysis nor pure intuition suffices for navigating multifaceted challenges. The franchise's enduring appeal across generations stems directly from this balance. Children respond to clear storytelling and emotional authenticity. Adolescents appreciate complex character development and moral questioning. Adults recognize sophisticated philosophical frameworks and cultural references. Each demographic finds satisfaction because the Golden Mean accommodates multiple levels of engagement. Consider how the Golden Mean explains the franchise's cultural impact. The Lion King has inspired scientific interest in African ecosystems, analytical response, and spiritual connection to ancestral wisdom. Authorial response. It has generated rigorous academic analysis and profound emotional attachment. It has influenced both environmental conservation efforts and personal identity formation. No single perspective narrative could achieve such diverse impact. Only through the Golden Mean could a story about animated lions contribute meaningfully to both scientific discourse and spiritual exploration. The implications for creative storytelling are revolutionary. The most powerful narratives don't force viewers to choose between intellectual stimulation and emotional resonance. They provide both simultaneously. They don't present simplified moral dichotomies, but complex interactions between competing goods. They don't resolve conflicts through dominance of one perspective, but through integration of complementary insights. Let's face it, Disney understood this principle decades before contemporary media theory articulated it explicitly. The most profound application of the golden mean appears in how the franchise treats truth itself. The Lion King doesn't present truth as either purely objective fact, analytical extreme, or purely subjective feeling, authorial extreme. Instead, it depicts truth as emerging through balanced integration of both approaches, what we might call lived wisdom. When Rafiki says you can either run from the past or learn from it, he's offering neither pure fact nor mere opinion, but wisdom that integrates factual reality with meaningful interpretation. When Mufasa explains that kings become stars, he's providing a perspective that honors both astronomical observation and spiritual continuity. This balanced approach to truth explains why the franchise resonates across cultural divides. Viewers from scientifically oriented societies appreciate its logical consistency. Those from spiritually oriented traditions connect with its metaphysical themes. Neither group must reject their primary orientation to appreciate the narrative. The golden mean accommodates both simultaneously. The franchise's handling of death illustrates this principle with particular power. Death is presented as both biological reality, analytical, and spiritual transition, authorial. Mufasa's body remains in the gorge, physical fact, while his essence continues in the stars, spiritual truth. The circle of life frames death as both ecological process and meaningful continuity. This balanced portrayal offers profound wisdom without imposing dogmatic theology. Viewers can interpret these elements through their own cultural and philosophical frameworks, while still absorbing the fundamental lesson about integration. What if the ultimate gift of the golden mean is freedom from false choices? The Lion King liberates viewers from numerous false dichotomies: reason versus emotion, science versus spirituality, tradition versus innovation, individual versus community responsibility versus joy. It demonstrates that wisdom lies not in choosing one extreme, but in finding harmonious balance between complementary values. The psychological benefits of this approach cannot be overstated. By modeling cognitive integration, the franchise promotes psychological flexibility and emotional resilience. It demonstrates that strength comes not from rigid adherence to one perspective, but from ability to adapt appropriately to changing circumstances. This explains why the franchise provides genuine comfort during difficult times. It offers not simplistic reassurance, but sophisticated wisdom about navigating complexity through balanced understanding. The final revelation. The golden mean isn't just a storytelling technique, it's a pathway to wholeness. Characters who achieve this balance find wholeness within themselves and harmony with their communities. They overcome not just external obstacles, but internal fragmentation. They discover not just how to survive, but how to thrive. The franchise doesn't merely tell us this principle, it shows us through its cumulative impact. After experiencing The Lion King in its fullness, viewers don't merely understand the concept of balance intellectually, they feel it emotionally, recognize it intuitively, and value it personally. The storytelling doesn't just communicate the golden mean, it cultivates it within the audience. This is the true legacy of The Lion King. Not just entertainment, but transformation. By creating narratives that honor both analytical precision and authorial voice, Disney hasn't merely told stories about balance. They've actively balanced their audience's cognitive experience, broadening perspective and deepening understanding. The golden mean isn't just the secret to understanding The Lion King, it's the gift the franchise offers to each viewer, a practical wisdom applicable far beyond Pride Rock. As we conclude our exploration, consider this final question that transforms everything. If finding the golden mean between analytical understanding and authorial connection leads to wholeness within the Lion King's universe, and if experiencing the franchise itself helps cultivate this balance within us, what might happen if we consciously applied this principle to our own lives beyond the screen? Perhaps the greatest adventure isn't watching Simba find his balance, but discovering our own. In a world increasingly divided between those who trust only facts and those who follow only feelings, The Lion King offers a more excellent way: integration rather than fragmentation, both and rather than either or. The question isn't whether to be Mufasa or Scar, Simba or Kion, analytical or authorial, but how to honor both dimensions of our humanity while finding our unique golden mean. The journey continues long after the credits roll,